Do I like build like do?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the January 22nd, 2019 informal work session of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners. On our agenda today, we do have two work sessions, or we don't have a work session scheduled, but we do have two department. Oh, we do have.
Trying to pull it away from you.
We do have two department updates scheduled, one that's on your agenda from our treasurer, Mike Green, and then another one from Gary Wirtz, our fair manager. So let me first turn it over to Mike Green. So Mike, if you want to come forward and give your report.
Thank you for letting me delay this for a week. A little less effective.
You can, yeah.
I will try to go quickly. I noticed you had a full agenda, and we covered a lot of this in the prior meeting. Quick update, we're through the first half of the fiscal year. Overall earnings for the county between investments and LGIP are up approximately $200,000 over the prior 6 months in prior fiscal year. Right now we're a little over about $630,000 in earnings. I am anticipating that the total earnings for the fiscal year will be probably around $1.4 million, which is a little bit more, I think, than what we had originally budgeted. And we'll probably, I'm working on numbers for next fiscal year, but I was assuming it'll be slightly higher. The reason for that primarily is the fact that we're investing more and we're getting a better return on our investment. LGIP is at 2.56%, and in January it actually has gone up to 2.75%. And the overall investment portfolio is just slightly under 2.4%. So we're literally up 20 basis points over where we were this time last year. So that's the reason for it. So I'll go quickly. Bond market is very interesting. It continues to go upward. I think you probably heard about the inverse curve, which means primarily that older bonds are not getting as good a return as younger bonds. But generally, between the prior quarter, when I talked to you in this quarter, that 2 to 5 year bond market for the same duration is up about 10 basis points. And so we've been taking advantage of it. Under old business, core rate of inflation, something we report on an investment committee. For the fiscal year or the calendar year that just ended, it was 2.2%. It's actually come down from a high this summer. And that's good news because we're actually getting more than 2.2%, so our money's earning more than what the rate of inflation is, and we're actually doing well that way. So I think that's a good thing. As far as cash balances that we track, there are 5 major funds. They are still tracking with a cash balance in excess of $20 million. Again, I bring that up only from the standpoint that as you're going through the budgeting process, that if that money can be looked at in a different way, classified more as longer duration, we have some more flexibility. Last but not least, unless you have questions on numbers, because I know you sat through over an hour and patiently the last time we talked a week ago. 2 recommendations came out of the investment committee. One is we're subject to our annual review, our investment policy. That's part of what's that's required by the state treasurer's office. There was no real recommendations made as far as the overall investment philosophy. But one of the things that did occur is that we have had an opening on the investment committee for some time. We had 3 very qualified, extremely qualified candidates, and I met with all 3 of them, and liked all three of them, and I think the county would be well served by having them participate in this committee. So a recommendation that was made by the investment committee is to change the number of members on the investment committee from 5 to 7, and that is in here as a potential board action. If you're willing to do that, then what I would also recommend is that the board also approve all three of those candidates as members of the investment committee.
Okay, we have those listed under our non-consent agenda items for
And I did
consideration,
provide,
so.
were they adequate descriptions, Ken, for what you needed?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we have everything
Okay.
we need,
So
so.
unless you have questions, that's.
Do we have any, Casey, you have any questions for Mike?
No, it was familiar, everything you sent to us, so from the investment committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks-
for your time.
thanks a lot,
Thank you
Mike.
for allowing me to defer.
Thanks for coming to our end of the county and doing, our end of the
Thanks for
county and doing
healing.
this.
Thanks healing.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, with that being said, we'll move on to our next department update. Gary, you want to come on forward and tell us a little bit about the Fair and Event Center and what's happening?
Good afternoon, everyone. As all of you know from our last time I was here, that 2018 was a good fair and one of our biggest fairs in the 165 years that the Yamhill County's had a fair. 2019 is on par with what 2018 is. The Delashman Arena, which is our gym, is actually booked at least 44 weekends last year, and we're already taking bookings into 2022 for it. So it's a pretty busy building. And they're just not equine events. There's a lot of other events that want to use it. So we're diversifying our portfolio a little bit, on rentals. And so we don't have to just depend on one species to survive.
Gary, what kind of other events other than equine events? What kind of other events are we booking into the arena?
Actually, there's a goat show where they're coming in. There's also a group, they call them farm shows. It's antiques, that type of stuff, that want to rent the arena because it's big enough. It's, one of the few buildings that are affordable and big enough in the county that they can use. So we just roll the dirt. They put their booths in, and we've had a couple of, we don't hold motorized events in there, but we've had a couple other different type of things that want to use the facility. Even we had a soccer team in there last fall, so that we're practicing in there a couple hours a night.
Gary,
So,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, are those farm shows in addition to the Overland Expo?
Those are more like a flea market type of thing.
Okay.
Other, people buy a booth, and you have an organizer, just similar to gun shows or any of that. Organizer sells booth space, and the people buy those booths, and they follow a certain show around, on a circuit. What I attribute some of that to is that Washington County has torn down their big buildings, and they're building that big 45,000 square foot building up there. So some of those shows are trying to come out here, and one of them actually said that they were already looking at coming out to Yamhill County, and this was the best place for them. So
And what's the frequency of those shows?
frequency is about once or twice a year right
Okay.
now. We've had them in the Lewis Pavilion, 2 or 3 times a year, smaller ones. Some of those are just, are going away into where these bigger ones. There's one being advertised now in Portland. That's a huge one. It's called I forget what it is, but anyway, it's just, it's an antique flea market is what it is. Doesn't affect anything with what we have to do with the, the expo, but it's all small stuff, from, not so much, they call them farm shows, but it's more household type of stuff.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
okay. So Lewis Pavilion, we're still holding it about 25 weekends out of the year. Plus, we have picked some weekly rental during the week. Just recently, we held a first responders training session was held there, where they were first responders from all over the state came, learned how to rescue livestock out of, you know, wells, ditches, ponds, that type of stuff. Along with there is a regional chicken show, believe it or not, that wants to rent the building. So we're going to rent it. We're all, you know, the fairgrounds is looking pretty, like we're going to be pretty busy in 2019. To the point that Travel Oregon and Travel McMinnville have scheduled meetings with us to discuss what's happening out the fairgrounds. When they realized that just how much we do bring to the local economy with the events that we hold out there, you know, it's still holding at about $7.5 million. So, according to Oregon State, so we're pretty happy about that. The big one is here in a few months we have the Pacific Overland Expo that we're partners with the Yamhill Academy, and that one we've just this morning took a call from someone from Nevada who has what was it, 12 rigs they want to bring up here for this one. So, and we're talking, you know, semi-hauling carriages and that type of stuff up here from Nevada. So we're pretty happy about that. It's come together. That'll be a big event. This is the third time. So on Friday, if any of you have time, Wells Fargo is bringing their stagecoach again to give free rides around the fairgrounds. So we're pretty happy about that, how that's come along. The future, the fair board, myself we're just in the first phase as we're trying to come up with a master plan. It's long overdue. Being that any type of master plan was done 20-some years ago, and it wasn't much of one. So we're trying to come up with that. We're just in the first phases and talking and getting ideas how to go about doing that. So, you know, as we go along with 27 acres in the future, we need to make sure that we use the property right and locate everything and keep the open spaces open, because believe it or not, the open spacers are also selling the facility. To quote, we had at the fair, we had the president of the IAF, he came to our fair, and the first thing she said, "You're one of the few fairgrounds in the nation that have trees. Everything else has been cut off, you know, cut down and paved." And she said that is perfect, and that's what we, you know, so those are some of the things that the master plan will address. And we're still working on the goal of preventative maintenance instead of reactionary maintenance. It's getting better. There's always something with buildings that were built in the 40s and on up into the 80s. There's always going to be a surprise or two. We do have the entertainment booked for the fair. I can't release the names yet, but one of them is two of them are national known acts. And then also this will be the 21st rodeo we've had out there, and the 10th Destruction Derby, and along with all the exhibits. So I think it's going to be another busy year. That's what we're there for. Along with the city of McMinnville is going to use the front lawn again for archery for the Parks Department. So like I said, I'm pretty excited how things are going.
Any questions for Gary?
Thank you, Gary.
The only comment I have, Gary, is that I think, you know, well, when Al was there, but especially now since you stepped in, you know, I've always looked at the fairground as one of those, or the jewels of Yamhill County the best jewel that nobody ever knew about.
Yep.
Well, it's becoming very evident now that everybody is knowing about it. And what, you know, if we look at like a lot of the events we're holding in the arena, the inside and Delashment and everything, do you know an idea how we compare with rates compared to others that would hold similar kind of events?
Well, part of our tractability is our building's old. So our rates are comparably speaking to what the building is. Now, with that said, if you compare us to, you know, Albany's arena, the arenas that are available, we're a lot less. did last, something that hadn't been done in 14 years, I did raise the rates. You know, water, gas, all that's gone up. And, you know, when I start looking at what we're paying, you know, for care of the building, and our rates are still reflecting, you know, 10-year-old, 20-year-old prices.
Right.
So we are raising the rates up, but comparatively speaking, you're taking a building like ours, which is $700 a day, compared to Albany's, Lynn County's, which is $1,600 a day. But then you got a building that's 10 years old, and you got a building that's, you know, 60 years old. In two different types of buildings. I mean, basically the arena floor is the same, but, you know, one can hold probably 4,000 people, and the other one can only hold, you know, 2,000.
Well, and the only reason I say that, because I'm definitely for keeping us competitive and not raising our rates
Right.
that much, but I'm also definitely for raising them to the point, which sounds like you're working on, where we could recover some of the cost of maintenance to do some of that deferred maintenance that has been put off for so long, because some of those buildings, and I say I have to commend you on this, because some of our buildings basically falling down around us, so. But you've done a great job out there, and the fair board's done a
Thank you.
very good
It's
job.
just, it's been labor of love all this time, but.
Well, you've been in it long enough, so.
And I really look at, you know, tearing a building down isn't always the answer. I mean, a lot of people don't know that, you know, two of the buildings were there before the war for the cavalry when they trained out there. That's why the fairgrounds is there in the first place. And those buildings actually are a lot better shape than the newer ones.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, we gotta keep it, you know, my goal is to keep our rates not, you know, we don't need to be the highest, but we don't need to be the cheapest. I wanna keep it, you know, market value, which will help us take care of the buildings, but, you know, we're competing, you know, you gotta understand, we are competing against buildings that are 10 years and newer than what we are, plus private facilities, which I don't wanna compete against private facilities. But there's some private facilities, you know, one down in Eugene and a couple up towards the Hillsborough area that are a lot more than us still. So, you know, it's affordable, especially when you get the high school equestrian teams. That's our big one that we're going to be stepping into here in the next month for 3 months. I mean, that's a big income producer for us.
Well, and I think it's not just what we bring in for the county. I think for less, whatever the amount we bring into the economy is such a boon to our economy locally that it makes a big difference.
I have at least 4 McMillan businesses that have us send our calendar over each month, so they know what's going on. You know, 2 of them are restaurants and 2 of them are feed stores. They want to know what's going on because they depend on us, you know, what we have going on, and a lot of others have started recognizing that. I know some people on Main Street actually said that to me here the other day. She says, I know when there's an event going on at the fairgrounds, because she says, I'm busy with all their wives.
Smart thinking.
So, anyway, so that's what's going on. If you
Okay,
have any questions,
anything more for Gary?
you can call me anytime or come out.
We will, and I'll set up a meeting with you, Gary.
Okay.
Gary will be the liaison with the fair, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay, that will take us into our preliminary consent agenda. Then we have 3 things on. We have our minutes and a particular contract or an intergovernmental agreement and a reappointment to Philip Griffin to the HAYC Board of Commissioners. So is there any questions on the consent agenda? If none, I'll entertain a motion that we approve it.
We don't do a motion at
Oh,
informal.
that's right. We don't
We
do a
just
motion to that.
move it to the consent agenda.
We move it to the.
I'm
we move
learning.
it to the.
It's already, yeah.
Right.
It's already there. So approval then?
Sure.
No.
Okay,
You-
Mary?
You wouldn't take a vote, you would just decide if you wanted to leave those items on the
Right.
consent agenda, or if you wanted to remove any of them.
Oh, that's
if
right,
we
because this
want
is a
to, we
combined,
can
that's
take
right, this
them
is
off
a,
the agenda.
I mean, so we want to leave them all on the consent?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Fine with
Okay.
me.
Thank you.
They'll all stay on the consent agenda.
You got off easy, huh?
Okay, we have several non-consent
audience.
agenda items, other topics for discussion. So the first one is consideration of amending the Yamhill County Investment Policy changing section 5C3, which Mike explained to us, standards of care from 5 to 7 voting members, from 3 citizens to 5 citizens. So, any discussion on that? Casey?
I think it makes sense. I think the candidates that are there are great, and I also think that we have, it's great to have more different voices on there. So.
Okay, so we want to move that to consent. Everybody
But do you
move
have-
that to the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move
I'm
that
good
one
with
to the
that.
consent agenda. Item number 2 is consideration of approval of the appointment of Chris Bledsoe, Diane Edwards, and Jim Shopfeld to the Investment Committee for a 3 term through August 6, 22. That's what Mike was telling us about, so do we want to move that to consent agenda?
I would just, at this point, Commissioner Kula, I think that
You
it
beat
would
me
be
to it.
appropriate to disclose the relationship of one of the applicants for the investment committee.
Well, I was what I wanted to ask about is so Chris Bledsoe is my mother-in-law. Christian, do I recuse myself, or I mean, we can move it to the consent agenda without me objecting. So
Correct, yeah, I don't believe you'd have to recuse yourself, but
Yeah.
we can talk further if you have questions about whether or not it creates a potential or an actual conflict of
Okay.
interest for you.
But moving it
Sounds
to the
good.
consent agenda isn't different.
Not a problem.
right.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
Okay.
so let's move that one to the consent agenda. Number 3 is consideration of declaring tax lot R4416DC00502, and that's the one located at 1235 Northeast 14th Street, McMinnville, Oregon, and all the improvements thereon to be surplus property, and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement for the sale of the property to the Yamhill County Mission and Oregon Public Benefit Corporation, the amount of $10,591.31 plus closing costs and fees. So Mary, you have any comments?
No, I just want to thank Christian for all the work that he put into this. This has been a long process just because it needed to be a different nonprofit without religious affiliation. And the fact that the mission is now going to be able to take this property is, I think it's exciting. And thank you for working through this whole effort.
The only question I have, Christian, is their official name the Yamhill County Mission now?
It is.
That's
They
okay.
formed a new public benefit
Corporation?
to
Okay.
hold this property, that's my understanding.
Okay. So then we'll move that to the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move that to the consent agenda. The 4th thing is consideration declaring the following tax lots, one which is R4307BA 04500, which is located at 954 East 5th Street in Lafayette, Oregon. And number 4, number R3717CC0128, located at 1130 Church Street. Let me get back up here. Located at 1130 Church Street. Is that
Dayton. That's in Dayton.
Oh, located at 303 Second Street, Dayton, Oregon. Those two located at 210 Ash Street, Willamina.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there's actually 4 properties.
In that one,
we're looking at. It's tax
That's what I
lots R6701DB 07600 located at 210 Ash Street in Willamina, R4317AD 01400 located at 303 Second Street, R4307BA 04500 located at 954 East 5th Street in Lafayette, and R4317CC 01028 located at 1130 Church Street in Dayton. Those are all properties that were obtained by the county through the property tax foreclosure process. The Housing Authority has expressed an interest, and they're ready to move forward with the purchase of those properties if the commissioners are still interested in continuing what has been an ongoing practice of trying to find partners who might be able to make use of these properties for low-income housing purposes.
And we'll access that as surplus property and authorize execution of purchase and sale agreements for the sale of those properties to the Yamhill County Affordable Housing Corporation, a public benefit corporation under the Oregon Nonprofit Corporation, and the amounts to be negotiated. So, should we?
And I don't have the agreements, but they'll be based on our previous agreements, and I'm confirming the amounts with the assessor's office. Unless we're given other direction from the board, those amounts would be the same that we've charged for other similar properties, which is the same amount that the prior owner would have been able to redeem the property for had they come on the last day of the 2-year redemption period.
And that's plus
redeem the property.
plus costs and closing, correct?
Up to that point.
Up to that point.
But not any other costs and fees that would have been incurred since then, or interest.
Okay, so should we move that to the consent agenda?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move
Thank
that
you
one to
for
the consent
explaining. I mean, I
agenda.
know, but-
Sure,
Yeah.
we can talk more about it.
Yeah. I was around for some of the other ones.
Okay, now we have other items for discussion to see if we want to move them to the consent agenda. And the first one, I'll turn over to Ken, it's discussion on work session scheduling and process. So Ken.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these, or a few of these are going to be discussion items. The first one is number 5, and with the number of requests and discussion items, and in the past, last year, we did have a session to where we scheduled a work session to where we basically calendared out what our work session schedules, if there was consensus from the board on specific topics. And the nice part with that is, getting this process refined a little bit, is if there's anything that requires staff to follow up on, it gives us sufficient time to pull data and have information available prior to that work session, depending on how it works. And so I asked to put this on here to possibly schedule a work session to schedule work sessions, because I'm just trying
That's what I was
to,
hearing.
as the incoming administrator, trying to find some ways that we can improve the processes, and with the items that are coming before the board, they're going to require a little more discussion and a little more planning ahead of time. So I'd like to see your interest in scheduling, a first work session to sit down with a calendar and kind of pencil out some topics and get it on the schedule.
Okay, Mary?
I appreciate that, Ken, because when there are a lot of items, it could tend to make the meetings go really long, whereas if we could piece them out, where we'd only have maybe 2 or 3 and then be able to not rush through it because there's other pressing meetings. But I appreciate that we would discuss what it's going to be, we'd have some time to think about it, get input, and then talk about it without there being so many at once.
Okay. Casey?
I think it's a great idea to get things scheduled. The thing I can anticipate is that items come up that we might want to talk about, but we don't have a calendared work session for, because we've already calendared out some other thing.
Well, I think personally that's one of the reasons of doing this, because if we can calendar out a lot of things we know about, that'll give us time in our meetings to discuss those things that may come up that we may not really have time to put on a calendar. And I know when I was elected 2 years ago and working with staff and Laura, my first year, to get the whole idea of the work session onto our meetings so we can pinpoint those things that we say, okay, maybe here's something that's going to, maybe we want to schedule this for the 3rd week in February or the 1st week in March or whatever. So it gives staff and the commissioners a lot more time to look at it, give it some thought. So I think, Ken, that was a very good idea, and I think we should probably schedule that first one to look at those kind of issues, because I'm sure there will be more in the next couple of weeks, so we can look at those and decide and get them on the calendar so we do know when we have work schedules. So I think I don't think there's any. I think we don't need to discuss anymore. I think we gave staff direction on what we would like him to do on that. So,
Okay.
Ken, if you want to schedule that first one out where we can talk about a lot of those kind of things and look at what we have, because I know looking at some of the commissioners' personal goals that they gave me before I became chair, there's some items that once I share them with you, because I still have to put a few in there, some that Commissioner Sterrett gave me, Commissioner Kula gave me, and some of ours, that would be a good input for that to see how we want to schedule those in on work sessions.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So I'm, not sure how soon the board would like to schedule this, if you want some time to go through your lists, if we want to schedule it as early as next Tuesday and have a dedicated work
How
session
about the
for
first
this.
week in February? How does the first week in February, that'll give us.
Well, we have one work session, I believe was February 5th, where we were going to, I don't have a calendar.
Isn't that next week, February
No, we
I
have
think
one
we have
more
one
week.
more.
I hope not.
We'll have to schedule to figure out
That's in
what the
2
schedule
weeks.
is.
February 5th is in 2 weeks, and I know we have a discussion on the High Heaven Gate for that informal. Let me see. Or how about February 12th?
I'd rather do it February 12th than do it right away, you know. I'd rather give you time to prepare for that. And
Okay.
let the commissioners, let me finish putting together what I'm putting together and give you, so you can look at that before you prepare it.
Okay, then hearing consensus, you know, it's February 12th, I'll get this put together, so that way we can,
Have all those items we want to do work sessions on.
Right.
And there may be somewhere we can do a couple of the items, depending on what.
Yeah,
what they
absolutely.
are, so. Okay, Ken, so I think you have your directions where to move staff on.
all right, thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item number 6, discussion consideration of an inclusivity proclamation. And I know last we talked, legal was going to do some wording, look at that and do some wording changes and bring back another copy. Is that still in work, Christian?
You should have the revised document in the agenda.
Yeah, I was
Has
looking for
everybody
it just
seen
now.
it?
I don't see it there.
Oh,
And I actually can't find it in my own email now.
I didn't see it either, I just probably missed it though. Where you go? It's under other business. That's a good place to put it, get a line that, other business.
I know that I got.
Okay, Mary, have you had a chance to look at this yet?
I just had a couple of, I don't know if this is the time or whether or not we should talk about it on Thursday. Either keep it off the consent agenda for discussion on Thursday, or a couple of suggestions.
I mean,
Or-
Commissioner Kula and I worked on the revised language. You're certainly free to, discuss it, review it, read it now, talk about it, and then keep it off, or you can recommend that it be kept off now and defer that discussion until Thursday.
So do you like to provide your input now, Mary? and
Sure,
then discuss it more
sure,
Thursday?
absolutely.
Sure.
I think if I'm understanding, Commissioner Kula, that this was, there were other cities that had done similar proclamations,
Correct.
and this is sort of patterned after those.
Correct.
I'd like to say that if we're going to do an inclusivity proclamation, that we not just follow what's been done, but that we set an example for what real inclusivity would be. And I know that in this county, we have become trailblazers for doing things, especially with health and human services, with housing, with a variety of different, with community justice, a variety of recovering addiction issues. And I would like to see that we have that spirit in any inclusivity proclamation that we put together. So I would like to suggest that we would include, for instance, that we would include seniors, that we would include the unborn, that we would include business owners, property owners, taxpayers, people of faith, farmers, recovering addicts, community members who are just getting out of jail, so that what we do is foster parents, biological parents, people who I'm looking in the last almost 5 years of who has come with issues or concerns. Those were the people who I felt that I was able to advocate for. And so I want to be able to say to everybody that when we do this in our county, we are not just going to pick and choose. We're going to basically say that anybody who has a concern is going to be covered in this statement.
That sounds good. I'm trying to pull up, the one that I got from Christian. Okay.
We did make a change to the first whereas clause that, and it before referred to contributing members of the community. I believe it now says all people. I don't know if that gets at some of what you were just discussing, or if you had some more, where you think it might fit
Yeah,
in there.
that's it.
Well, I just
Thank
think
you.
if we are going to call out anybody, that we actually make it a point to call out people in our community who might be, feeling that they haven't had particular advocacy, or that they had fear, as you mentioned, around contacting anyone in government, working with government. So if we're going to call out specific groups, let's not exclude anyone, but this would be real inclusivity.
Yeah, I see some of those things within the statement, the language that's there. Like it does say, regardless of, for example, religion or economic status. And I think that's, I'm sure that we can include language that provides for what you suggest too. Because it is really important to me that everybody in our county knows that.
Yeah.
And you have set an example for working with people who feel like they are left out.
Thank you.
So, I think that it is,
Yeah,
I think it's totally,
Yeah, the only thing I have to repeat is two
Appreciate
things
that.
that I
Yeah.
like is one thing Mary said is that like in the paragraph 2 where we have all people regardless of race, color, one thing that when I first read this, it dawned on me, there's nothing in there about age whatsoever, and you brought up about the seniors. There's nothing in there that talks about age whatsoever.
right
that I
now
could
it says
see.
age after religion. I apologize, I don't mean to. I just, it is right there.
The reason I missed
But
it is
you
there's
mean-
no
are you
comma
looking at a
between
different
age and
one?
economic status.
I think we just have one, right?
Yeah, but the reason I missed it, because there isn't a comma between age and economic status. It looks like age economic status. But that's just the deal. But what
That may
what I
have
was-
been a transposition error.
Yeah, but what I was really happy about
the Word
this
doc has
is, and the one thing that I talked about at the last meeting, and I think it was very good, and the therefore, item number 3, where have access to use the county services in accordance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations. I think that was a very critical change to me to ensure that we are following the laws, we are following the regulations set for us, and we're not deciding to go out another way. But I think with the changes you suggested, Mary, I know if those kind of changes are made, I don't have any problem at all
And-
supporting this.
I really appreciate that you added this, and that such access is not illegally denied, conditioned, or withheld based upon all those. And I thought that was a nice way to say, hey, we can do some things, but we're not going to deny you based upon these things.
Right, we'll
based upon this
follow.
list of
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that's good.
I
So,
thought that was good. I was like, yeah.
do we want to direct Christian to work with Casey to make those additional
Do you have
changes
the,
and include those things you might
I
want
can
to include?
I can send you and copy Christian.
I'm trying to.
Do you want me to say what they are now? Do you want me to go
I
over
mean, we've
that?
got them in the record.
You've got 'em in the
I can
And
Oh,
you
yeah.
can send them
after
to
the
Christian, and he
Okay.
can
meeting. And then, yeah, I
include
mean,
them.
that would be true for any of you if you have other suggestions.
Yeah, and then.
After the meeting today, just.
Yeah, then I think, then
Sounds good.
Thursday,
Be a
I think we
conduit.
could probably.
I'll bring
And-
it back, and you can discuss it further on Thursday.
Yes, and Commissioner Kula, thank you for broaching this subject.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
I like it,
thinking
I
about
like
it.
it,
I
Casey,
appreciate
very,
it.
very, very good. Okay, so we're given staff direction on that one. The
Just to
third,
clarify, are we going to have this as an agenda item for Thursday?
to discussion and adoption, I like for discussion and adoption under other business,
Just keep it off.
because then we'll
That's what I
see
was
a
hearing.
product.
Yeah, it's just not on the consent agenda because there's not the
I just
language
want to
yet.
confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's
that-
going to go. It's
that
gonna
we're gonna
say-
have it on the
Yeah,
agenda
it will
for
be on the
Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, discussion, Casey, I think you put this on discussion
Yes.
regarding gated high heaven.
Yeah,
High
yeah,
heaven.
exactly.
Okay.
And since it was my first formal meeting, I think that the language that I was using wasn't totally appropriate for what I was intending to do with the first meeting, which is that I was hoping to suggest to the board that we actually rescind the board order as the permit the gate. And so I wanted to get that officially before you.
Okay.
That I think that we heard enough testimony about it.
So I think this.
But, yeah, I was going to say that there's also the issue of directing staff to develop a process for the keys, is what we last had.
Well, but I
Go ahead.
believe that in order to, you wanted to change your vote? Is that-
No, because the
There
vote
wasn't
was
a
on a
vote.
motion
Yeah.
that there was a motion for directing staff to develop a process for issuing keys.
And
Right.
come back to us
Yeah.
on the 4th or the 5th, wasn't it?
Right.
There was consensus that that
We were
staff
gonna come
return
back
on the 5th
With conditions for the permit.
Right.
for the permits.
Okay.
That's
But-
my understanding of what we.
Right, and then at that
passed
time, we could
coming
either
back.
determine whether we want to rescind the permit? or-
'Cause there
Is
was-
that what, is that, because I remember it being just about the issuance of keys and a process for keys.
Well, we were given direction, staff, to come back.
Yeah.
But there was not a motion made at that time, nor was there a vote taken
Okay.
to do that. It was, you know,
I would have to go back and listen to it to remember exactly what was said, but I believe what I'd been working towards was coming back February 5th, I
Fifth.
believe,
Mhm.
with some suggested conditions to the permit to try to address access through the gate and the issuance of keys. We can continue to do that. You could have this larger discussion then again at that time and discuss whether or not those conditions might be acceptable, or if you're still interested in making a motion for the board to consider revoking the permit, basically, and leaving the gate open.
Right.
I don't recall that that specific option had been discussed at any length
Yeah.
by the board. Certainly a topic that the board could choose to discuss now if you wanted, or we could wait until we came back with those suggested conditions to the permit and use that as an opportunity to revisit
Sure.
the matter. It's really up to the board.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would still rather have the direction we gave staff to report back to us on the 5th. And then at that time, if we don't agree with those, or, because Ken was going to contact warehouse, or if we don't agree with that, then we can entertain the motion whether we want to revoke the permit or not.
Okay, because I thought the direction we had given was just about the process of issuing keys, which would be different than, say, the process of opening the gate.
No,
Commissioner?
you're right.
Yes.
I think you're right, and so
Yeah.
that would be a whole separate thing. So
Mhm.
here's a list of conditions for keys.
Right.
And now, do we want to go to the next step?
Which would be opening the gate,
Which
revoking
were-
the permit.
Or, yeah.
Might be some other option.
There might be
we
some
don't
other
know until
option
we
as
get
well
from
that doesn't
staffs.
yet exist.
Correct,
Right.
every option is still on the table.
Okay.
Leaving the permit as it is, revoking the permit entirely, modifying it with some new conditions, those are all still options, I believe.
Because if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken, if
Sure,
we
to
modify
discuss.
and we say, okay, warehouse, or here's some conditions we're putting on you,
Mhm.
and they elect not to
Mm.
want those conditions, then it's very easy to say, okay, fine, we're gonna revoke the permit.
Sure.
But I want to make sure everybody has a chance, because I don't know how this will
Yeah.
turn out. So I'd still like to wait till the 5th until staff comes back to us what their recommendations are.
That sounds good. And will we be able to, at that time, I kind of wanted to get John Phelan to weigh in too, Director Phelan, since it is a road issue. And I can't remember, I didn't see anything from him in the testimony in the public hearing. But he
I
was,
don't think there was.
okay. Okay.
But
I'm just
there-
curious what he has to say about it, so.
Yeah,
You're certainly free to talk with him.
Okay.
Outside of a meeting to
Oh,
get
yeah.
his input.
Right. And that
'Cause
could-
you are the
I
public-
can
you
either
are-
bring it or he could be present, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
well,
because
the
you are the
invite
public
him to
works
come back.
liaison,
Great.
so you could
Invite
feel free to
comment.
do that.
Yep.
Great.
Either works. We'll try and make sure those conditions are circulated far enough in advance that the.
Yeah, because I don't want this
John
to,
has some time to discuss.
either way, I don't want
Yeah.
it to
We'll
drag
aim
on
on-
for another month and a half,
Right.
I want to get,
We'll
I
aim
want
to
to
get
get it
those
settled.
circulated next week, so
Yeah.
we'll have
Okay.
a full week.
Discussion of location of commissioners meetings. So Casey, is that one of yours?
That's right.
It's one of, and it's
How
one of
did you
mine?
know?
Well, I knew it was of mine too, last year.
Oh, was it one of yours?
Yeah.
Let's see, I have some notes on that one, which is that, there's been some conversation about, whether the city of McMinnville might be willing to let us use the Kent Taylor Civic Hall for our regular Board of Commissioner meetings. And, I wanted to see if we could start a formal process of directing staff to have that conversation. And the reasons that I can think of for that is, one, it is much more accessible. Two, it's much more comfortable of a place, especially for folks who feel uncomfortable going through security and going into the courthouse. We, a long time ago, actually communicated about this, I just realized, because I was uncomfortable. And then it provides a level of transparency of our meetings because they're very open. You know, I might even see if I can get a signboard so we can put it out. But then the benefit for the courthouse is that they are growing short on space here for their operations. And I hear that, no formal process, but I continue to hear that from the DA's office and from the judicial department. And so I wanted to bring it up to see if there was any interest from the two of you.
Mary?
I remember when you were mayor, Mr. Chair, we had talked about that because I was over there, you were helping me set up for I think it was a water task force.
Yeah.
And we talked about that, and it seemed on the surface a good idea. And then I started thinking about a couple of things. Parking, if you've ever been to a meeting over there that's just a little meeting, it really does fill up pretty quickly. And then you've got trying to park in that little downtown 2nd Street, 3rd Street area, which I've been late to meetings because of the parking situation. I think what we found in the past is that we think people don't come to our meetings for XYZ reason. We've even gone to their cities and gone to their city council meetings, and typically people still won't come to your meetings, except if it's a hot button issue, and then they'll show up.
Right.
But typically we'll sit here and it'll just be us. The other thing about security is I had some concerns about security initially.
Yeah.
And then I didn't, because as you know, with what we do, it's sometimes controversial, and I feel like we are sort of vulnerable when we don't have the option of having that measure of security. So there's that component. If we're in the Civic Center, we really don't have that. The other thing is, I don't know whether it's their recording setup has been problematic in the past.
Well, yeah, actually, it's really good. I mean, we'd have to have our staff trained by their people how to use it. But it's actually a very good system. And for people that are hearing impaired, they actually have
they have the
Bluetooth headsets that people can put on so they can listen. They can listen to everything.
So the other concern I had was having to do with staff. I know that there will be times where we will literally have to have somebody run across the street with a document or run across the street from planning. And I know with county council and with other staff, being able to run across the street at the 11th hour, even if we call them in the middle of a meeting, how many times have we called them and we've had people come over because we're discussing something we needed to have them there for. So I would not be in favor of it. I think it's, again, one of those solutions in search of a problem. And I think it just, I don't know why we would necessarily have to do that, but that's just my, originally I thought it was a good idea, and then I thought, ooh, maybe not.
Well, you know, part of my opinion is I do think it's a good idea. And to just address a couple things is security. The security, believe me, to get a police officer there or somebody, because it's monitored by YCOM all the time. There's buttons under the Diaz, you know, and with you do it, I tell you, you'll have a city police officer probably within a minute and a half.
And a minute and a half is a really long time when someone is standing in front of you with perhaps the intention of doing you harm, whereas here, at least we can mitigate that to the degree where we don't have people maybe bringing weapons in. And so it's sort of an equal playing field. But if you go to a scenario where we're sitting there and you can tell me all day long you've got a minute and a half for a police officer to show up, but a minute and a half is an eternity when you're facing potential
and I agree
danger.
with that. I think we don't necessarily gain anything by going through security. I mean, yeah, we go through security here, but I look at the transparency issue. Now, what I would be for is I'd be for trying it for 6 months and then making the evaluation if it is something that will permanently work. Because I know a lot of people say that, you know, just trying to come up the ramp, and even though we have a good handicap ramp, we have good security, some of them have to get in the elevator, come downstairs and everything, and a lot of them, now I've never witnessed the problem with parking myself. I've always found that that with the parking lot there that is for City Hall, that I haven't found, but I'm not saying there isn't one, I've just never witnessed it myself, but I would like to see at least staff look at what it would take and come back to us with saying, if we were to do this, this is the cause effect. This is what it would cause us to do. This is what we'd have to do. These are the benefits. These are now, because I think for that transparency and the size of the room, I think myself personally, it's a good idea. Of course, you know me, I've always thought it was a good idea.
You have a special place in your heart for that area.
Well, I do, because I think it's very well to let people sign in outside the meeting and
Right.
put information outside the meeting.
You're right.
So I just think it's a good idea. Now, what city may not want us to do it. Who knows? We
So
don't
I
know
have
that.
a question about transparency. I'm not sure what isn't transparent about the venue that we have now.
Well, I think people just don't feel, a lot of people, just because of their condition or their physical condition, a lot of people just don't feel secure coming to the meeting down here. I don't think it's all
Yeah.
with security, Mary. I think it's just to go up a ramp, a flight of stairs, or up a ramp, come in, go down a flight of stairs, or go down an elevator, and then have a 10-minute meeting, and then turn around and have to go back up the elevator and down the ramp. I personally just don't think it works as well, but that's just my opinion. But if I propose it, I wouldn't be proposing a permanent solution. I'd be trying to see how it works. We might find out it doesn't work at all. We might find out you're exactly right, and it doesn't work at all. But I don't think if we don't try it, we won't know. So.
Perhaps, do you have a?
No, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it's like all of my life I've been trying to not interrupt people, so. The one thing I have observed with you, I'm not sure if it was Commissioner Starrett or not, but you said, well, we're meeting over in room 32 from now on for informal on the Tuesday, and I noticed that the attendance greatly exceeded almost immediately the space in the Fenton House. And I'm reminded, as a kid, I was forced to watch, what's the movie about Field of Dreams? And the cornfield was whispering, build it and they will come. And I thought it was kind of appropriate for here that you made the move to have us be here on Tuesdays, and almost instantly there were more people than could fit in the Fenton House office. I thought, wow, that's pretty great. It was just like magic.
Well, what was happening at the time was that I think you were there, we had issues that people were coming without understanding that this was not a forum for public input. But so there were people who were just showing up and we couldn't do it.
Right.
And then we said, watch what happens as soon as we go over to room 32, we're not going to get a lot of people. And we typically don't have a lot of people come to them, and then, so we'll just have to see. But I think this is a lot more comfortable, but I also think that this should be our place.
Yeah.
This is where we know the commissioners are going to be meeting here, and it does tend to make it a little bit, I don't know, confusing that now we're in here and now we're over here, whereas at least if we can, because typically people don't come to Tuesday's meeting. That was informal, and that was a work session for the commissioners, and there weren't ever people there.
People found out, though, that this is when we talk about everything.
And we do a lot of talk about
Yes, like there's a guy in the back who is like, that's where they talk about everything.
That guy has a name.
Yeah, that guy.
That guy has a name.
Hello, Ramsey.
I can't go anywhere.
No, you can't.
I think that we actually all know you, so it's not. But as a person who has spent a lot of time out in the light blue chairs with the black, I've sat through lots of meetings out there over long meetings, and I could tell you it is a lot more comfortable for the county residents who want to be present, or who think they might want to be present in the Civic Hall. That trail hearing or the solar hearings last year that went hours and hours and hours, people could get up and move around, and it was much more comfortable there.
I agree on those types of we don't have those types of meetings with that much attendance, but on a weekly basis where our meetings are 3 minutes long, to get in the car or to walk over there, whereas this is boom, 3 minutes, we're back across. It's just, I feel like it's going to add time and be a little more cumbersome. But the big ones, I think, be there.
Well, it is my intention that the meetings, we talk about more, as you can see from the list.
Yeah,
So-
I think, I really think that, again, I think I think it's a great idea, but I'd like to do a little bit more research on it and see what, and have staff
Yeah.
work with the city manager and staff and see exactly what the pros and cons are, because we might look at after all those pros and cons and say, it's not worth doing. And then if we do it for 3 or 4 months and see if it works. Because we're not tied into anything. I know in Salem, the Marion County Board of Commissioners, the City of Salem, Chariots and the Shemeketa Board, they all meet in the exact same place downtown. All 4 groups meet in the same chamber, so they didn't have to have separate ones. So I guess
Would it
I'm
be
definitely
possible
willing to try
sorry.
it. Go ahead.
Would it be possible to loop in the Oregon Judicial Department and the DA's office as well in the conversation, because they envy our real estate here? I just know that. So
Well, I would just add that we should probably look in, the availability of the space, and
Yeah.
if staff's able to investigate that before
oh yeah, before talking.
that we're saying that this space is available to use.
Yeah.
Or we lose this and then it
Well, no,
doesn't work.
I agree with you,
Right.
Ken.
You
I think
know.
that's a good point. Yeah, the order of
I gotta look at
operations.
the cost too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hearing, I can get with IT and facilities and I can connect with the city and find out I don't know if there's going to be a cost associated with using the space. I don't know as far as the network compatibility, I can start exploring
Okay.
some of that. Adding to it, I also just want to, this room was another one of the projects that were on the capital list.
Oh, right.
And hearing that this came up, I've told Joe and Shane to put the brakes on,
Which is a wise decision.
because we were looking at needing to update our recording software, and if we were going to do other improvements to this space, it doesn't make any sense to spend the money on the improvements if we're potentially exploring relocating elsewhere. So,
Right.
so I'll connect with Jeff at the city and get more information and come back and report.
Great. Thank you for your willingness to do that.
Oh, the other thing one thing to keep in mind too is with our meetings on Thursdays, and if we were relocate over there during the summer months, the farmer's market usually runs on Thursdays as well.
So there's parking.
Parking.
So just something
That
to,
is a consideration.
it's just something that just hit me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they
but I heard they're moving the farmer's market again.
Oh,
Where are they
okay.
moving it to?
They're gonna move it, I guess, to Evans, part of the parking lot behind the old penny store in Evans Street, to get it more down into the center of
Oh.
Interesting.
town.
That's
All
where
right.
my parking permit is.
Used to be.
No, I have a parking permit for
Okay,
that
so
parking lot,
why don't we,
actually.
Ken, I think we have a consensus that our administrator will go back and study
Okay.
that.
Did you also want to talk about, at this time, taking some meetings on the road? Isn't that something that I also seen in your request for, I didn't know if that was a different
Oh,
discussion
yeah.
topic.
Well,
or if that's-
but thank you for reminding me, because I wanted to, Commissioner Starrett a long time ago had mentioned to me that sometimes we have our board meetings at council or at
They're
city
really a
council
town
chambers.
hall meeting.
Or is it a
Town
town
hall.
hall? So it's not our formal meetings.
No, we don't.
So, when I was chair last time,
Yeah.
and this last time, I had said that, the criticism is that we're not available, we're not out there.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, let's take the show on the road, and we would go to city council meetings. When they met, we would have a town hall prior to that,
Mhm.
and then if there were city council issues, we would just be there for that. And I think the places where there was the biggest turnout was Sheridan
Mhm.
and Newburgh.
We had, what, 2 in Yamhill, I think, wasn't it?
And you'll have a couple of people, no, there was a handful of.
And Newburgh was huge.
And Newburgh was huge, Sheridan was huge, McMinnville, Zippo,
Yeah.
and we had.
Oh, I was at the McMinnville one, yes.
Yeah, okay,
I
all right, so
remember.
one person was
Oh, that's
there.
right, I was the one.
You were the one. We had a handful of people in Yamhill, Dayton. So really, we were taking that on the road, and what we were finding is that even when we were after hours, not at 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
and we were right there in their neighborhood, people typically don't come to these types of meetings unless they have a an issue.
A particular issue.
A particular issue.
Yeah.
So that's about taking the county commissioner meetings on the road might be problematic for people who are used to us meeting here.
Right.
Yeah, I think we should continue the town hall meetings the way we do them. I'd like to see them done more than once a month in each city, but like Mary said, we have those cities that nobody shows up, so I don't know if you do one combined for Yamhill and Carlton, combined one for combined Sheridan and Willamina, or what you do, but I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then I was just meeting with along similar lines, I went to I introduced myself to the tribal council, and John and George brought up that you used to do combined meetings or some. He didn't give specifics of, but he thought that the tribal council,
yeah, we still do.
but he couldn't remember how long ago, and so I wanted to
Well,
bring
John
that
has a
up.
little trouble remembering.
We still do the schedules is that what we would do is trade off. We'd go out there for lunch, they'd come in here and we'd host them for
Okay.
lunch. So we've been doing that every year, and now I believe it's our turn, because we were out there last.
Okay.
So it's our turn, and we do have that on a regular basis.
Okay. Great. I can check it off my
Yeah,
list.
'cause, you
then.
know,
that was easy.
I think part of my opinion, if every 3 months, which is every 12 meetings on an average or whatever, I can see having a commission meeting, maybe at Newburgh Public Safety Building to give those people, but other than that, to go commission meetings for every city, I can't. So, but Newburgh
Right,
is
so it was
big enough,
town
and they have
halls.
enough hot topic issues over there, that it may be worth us
We
looking
could
at
put
that
some
in
on the
future.
agenda.
Yeah.
That affects
we'll give them
Newburgh?
some.
Okay, so Ken, I
Like the
think you have your
landfill or
direction on
something.
that. I know Mary's got a meeting to go, so let's move forward. I want to be sensitive of her time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next one is discussion of the invocations at formal meetings. Casey, that's yours.
And Commissioner Sarah, when did you need to be out of here?
Oh, I'm fine. They're
Okay.
used to me being late. I think we're actually.
I think we're moving through. So
We're fine. I'm
Yeah.
good, amazingly.
So I just wanted to bring up that I've had a lot of people talk to me about being uncomfortable with being present or feeling like the invocation at formal meetings takes away from the time of doing the work of the Board of Commissioners in the county, and so I wanted to propose that we not do it anymore, and that's as a deeply religious person who's very comfortable with prayer of all kinds. So wanted to put that.
Mary, I'll turn it over to you.
I just wanted to say, a couple of things, just in terms of the history of it here in our county. We, when that Supreme Court decision came down that would allow public bodies to have prayer at the beginning of at their meetings,
Yeah.
we knew that there were certain parameters where there's no proselytizing and we can't advance any one particular religion. We've had people from Freedom From Religion come and do an invocation, or I guess you wouldn't call it an invocation, do a
Devocation, maybe.
a devocation.
Exvocation.
We've had people come who express an interest in being here. But I was thinking about, well, why is it that it seems to be a Christian invocation? And then I thought, okay, well, we're in a county of 104,000 people. We've got perhaps upwards of 200 churches. We don't have any mosques, we don't have any synagogues, we don't have any ashrams. So it isn't that we are excluding, it is that this is a region which is traditionally, has had it heritage-wise, had that Christian mooring, and their faith shows it in the number of churches, whether they attend them or not. And then I just look at the fact that since 1777, Congress has had a paid chaplain do an invocation at the beginning of their sessions. It's been going on since 1777. So we've been doing this for 220 years, and suddenly now people are uncomfortable. Are they uncomfortable because we pledge allegiance? Are we uncomfortable because someone's level of discomfort should not take away from the fact that, one of the things I see in here every week is that another person doing an invocation will tell us about the work they're doing in the community. The faith community is doing the heavy lifting with our kids, our seniors, people on the street, our addicts, and we will take their work and their message, which informs and inspires their work, and yet to have them come and to ask a blessing on this meeting somehow makes them uncomfortable. But it's not uncomfortable for us to have them go out in our community and do work that nobody else wants to do.
perhaps I could make a response.
You can make a response.
Which is that I want to say that I'm uncomfortable with it, and I want us to do the business that's on the agenda.
I'll tell you a little bit about my family. Mary's exactly right, and I think it was May of 2014 when the Supreme Court ruled, that in front of legislative meetings, prayers were kept, and they set all real tight guidelines on what you could say. But the Supreme Court voted on a 5-4 split vote, so they couldn't really even hardly decide what was right or what wasn't wrong. And I guess the issue I have in our pluralistic society today, if it makes one person who listens to a prayer in front of us, gives them a feeling of uneasiness or isolation, or they feel excluded because they may not like to listen to prayer, and prayer's always divided communities along religious lines. And even though we can't say we are predominantly Christian, and that's the way Yamhill County is. And so that's permissible, but what I keep asking myself, right, because it's permissible, does that just necessarily mean it's right? And that's why I kind of feel compromised sometimes, because I believe that politics and government business is politics and government business, and worship is worship. You can worship in your church, you can worship in your home, you can worship a lot of things. And a lot of people talk about politics in their home, but the decision-making body, I think, it's political, and I feel very compromised in it. And it's not because I don't believe in God, because I do, and I worship my own way. I don't go to church every single week, but I worship my own way. I just feel if one person of our citizens feels uncomfortable because we're doing a prayer, or they feel excluded for some reason, then we shouldn't do it. It has nothing to do whether it's legal or not. It really has to do with, to me, whether it's right or not.
So you know that the people of the Jehovah's Witness faith are not comfortable with pledging allegiance to the flag. So if someone who is a practicing Jehovah's Witness comes into our meeting and expresses the fact that it makes them uncomfortable to pledge allegiance to the flag, would that then be, by that reasoning, we would no longer pledge allegiance to the flag? You have a picture on your desk of you and your wife. Someone who's been divorced might look at that, and that might make them uncomfortable because you're still married. I mean, we could really, by extension, you walk up the steps of the Supreme Court, and what do you see? You have a picture of Moses holding the Ten Commandments. So the Judeo-Christian ethic has informed our nation from day one. And so to say it makes us feel uncomfortable, where do we end when something makes someone feel uncomfortable?
I really, well, maybe I don't need to speak in it. I really appreciate your comments. And I also want to make sure that it's clear that I also really appreciate the work of the churches in our community. I feel like they step up every day on so many challenges. And sometimes maybe the county should be stepping up more, but I'm glad that in many cases has started with churches in our community. I would like to point out that at the informal session, we don't do a Pledge of Allegiance. And at the informal session, we don't do an invocation. And I'm sure that there's lots of reasons historically why we did that. But we clearly feel comfortable, if we're going to talk about comfort and discomfort, we clearly feel comfortable with not doing prayers sometimes when we're all just the only ones here, but we're doing them when we hope that lots of people will come and join us and provide their thoughts. And so I thought it was interesting to realize that we don't have that on the agenda for today, the flag salute and invocation.
And we have lots of meetings. We don't do, when it's called formal session, is because, there really is something to be said for the fact that even though I don't feel like us being up here is necessarily the most comfortable thing for citizens, and you and I have talked about this, and I've always felt that it would be more comfortable for us to sit at a table with people, because this sort of confers this hierarchy, which is disturbing on many levels. But I think the reason we do this is because it's easier for people to see us and hear us.
Right.
That being said, this is a formal session on Thursdays where we have more of the the pomp and circumstance, if you
The
will,
trappings.
and more of the trappings of a formal process. And we dress differently, our demeanor is different, and we have lots of meetings during the day where we don't stand up and pledge allegiance. I just think, especially now, for us to say something that we've done for 220 years in this country, especially with what we're facing in terms of maybe needing guidance and needing blessing, to take that away is not doing us any favors in this county. That's how I personally
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, thank you for those words.
Yeah, and Mary, I definitely agree with you. Since 1777, we've been doing this in Yamhill County. We've been doing it for 6 years now, I think, since the beginning of Commissioner Springer's first
so.
term, when he brought it up and wanted to do it. And I got to thinking, well, if we did do it, it was good up until that time. Were we doing everything wrong up until that time? Because we didn't do it.
No, it was the Supreme Court decision that precipitated us doing it.
2014, that was only 4 years. That was only 4 years ago. So that was, Commissioner Springer brought it up before the Supreme Court ruling was made. So
I
I just don't feel
compromise
comfortable doing it.
solution, which is that if I've noticed that we all tend to be here a little early. What do you think about the three of us and some member of the religious community, praying together, not during the formal moments of trapping and the gavel coming down? Because I would be very comfortable with that. Of the three of us with somebody, and we're elected officials. The other people who are here from the county, they don't get a choice in it. They have to be here, who work for the county. Of the three of us and a clergy member, not on the microphone.
Yeah.
But we don't have, if you
We don't.
notice, it's not a clergy member. It's someone who is, anybody.
Thank you. Yes,
Sometimes it is,
thank you for
sometimes it
clarifying the
isn't.
language. I
Anybody-
appreciate it.
anybody.
Anybody who wants to.
And there is no,
Yeah,
you're a clergy member, you can pray.
right.
I think, and I appreciate that compromise. I think my preference, and again, we know I can count, that doing it as if it is part of our meeting just confers a different spirit on what we're about to do. But I would not, if it's got to be that or nothing,
I would be really interested in that, so.
I think that's something we can.
Yeah, but
I don't know if this guy would
Well,
do
no,
well.
even if I was, do you do it outside? Because you're going to have a lot of people sitting in here before.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
now, I
The
would probably
logistics of
offer a
that are
different
certainly.
compromise, and I did some research on this after I saw this.
It
Is
just
that
said
what some
discussion.
jurisdictions have gone, is they've had a minute or 2 minutes of silence for reflection before you do the flag salute. If you want to pray, you can pray. If you want to, on your own, if you want to think about how your day's
Right.
going to go, you can do that, but just have a minute or two of reflection before the meeting starts, and you can do with that minute or two whatever you want to do. So that would be mine, but.
And you're sitting there thinking about your list at Fred Meyer's. Okay, I need to pick a, but
So, for some
But-
people, that's their prayer.
for some people, it's their
Yeah.
prayer. But the other thing is, I think about the tone that it says. I think about lately some of the people who've come in here, and the stuff they've said has been so spot on for what was going on. Jason Willoughby said afterwards, he sent me an email, and he says he had prayed that all of us would find a way to deal with our differences in a civil way. He sent me an email after that. He said, my prayer was answered. I couldn't believe how hard you all worked at having a peaceful discourse. And he says it was just amazing. But I think the tone is set by just that inspiring message. But I'll stop now.
Yeah.
I appreciate that idea, and I'm happy to
Well, I think
move to that.
we're going to have to probably sooner or later make a decision what we do. I'm not for continuing it the way we do it.
Okay.
The way we do it now.
I don't know if we have to make a decision. I feel like you and I talked about
Because
this,
if it
Christian.
does, it just drops.
'Cause it's
we
not
don't. It's not confirmed.
part of
by
I
our-
don't remember how it was put in place before, but we can double check that.
I know it wasn't a board order, and it wasn't because it wasn't
Take
in
a look.
900.
Yeah, because I'm
No, it's
looking
not
at
in
the
900.
procedures ordinance, and I
It's
don't know
not
if
in
it
there.
Yeah, I
was.
think so.
No,
Yeah.
it's not there.
I believe it was maybe simply something that the board chose as, a group to begin doing,
Yeah.
but we can double check.
Is that something that would have to go on the non-consent agenda, or would that be something to vote
Again,
on?
we're
or
not
is it
sure
too-
that it actually
it
was
has to-
instituted through any kind of formal action, in which case, if it wasn't, it may not need to be stopped through any formal action other than a discussion of the board and, you know,
Right.
an agreement that it's no longer going to be continuing. And then if there is a board member who would like to see it continue, they could maybe make a statement about that at formal session, or you could certainly call for it to come to a vote too. You know, you can make a motion that way as well.
Right.
I should note that I have asked people through the end of February to come, and there are a variety of people from the community who are scheduled to come, and I would hate to have to say to them, okay, now, don't come. So that's just where I'm at with having commitments from people.
I'm fine going through that.
I try to always fulfill my commitments, so I appreciate, you know, like I understand how you feel then, of like, oh, yeah. So that's
I have no
something
problem
I'm
going through the
totally,
end of February. I
yeah.
don't have any problem with that at all.
So I guess we would have to, maybe on Thursday, actually have a formal vote as to what, so that we can say,
Or we could just let it die.
Again,
if it's
yeah.
no vote.
Yeah, I don't think that there
I don't
is.
know that you need to, if you would like to have a formal vote,
well, I guess it's
One way or
clear.
Mary kind of knows where
I
the
can-
numbers
I
are.
can
She
count.
knows where the numbers drop.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is why.
This is
I
why we
think-
can't have a 9 commissioner board, because you're like, oh, 4, 5? Too big of
Well, then I
numbers
would
for
just
me.
make the last comment, though, because Mary, I think you said you were done. I'll just make the last comment that we honor Mary's commitments through the end of,
Yeah.
February.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And thank you for all those good thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
Very, very well said.
You're spot
Very much
on.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Department Director evaluation process.
So I put that on because I didn't see it in the ordinance that governs Ken's, the county administrator role, and I wanted to,
I think
Put
it is
forward
in
that
the
I think it's really-
contract. It's in the contract, isn't it, Ken?
okay, it's not,
actually in the
it's not in the
contract.
ordinance, okay.
No, it's in the
Okay, that's
contract.
good. I just wanted to put forward publicly that I think it's really important and that I want to
Yeah.
support you in that, in whatever way I can.
It's the last
And that's
month.
the entirety of my
It's in
discussion.
February, isn't it?
For my evaluation and Christian's
It's in
evaluation.
February. I mean,
I-
in December.
I don't know that you're talking about the same
No.
things.
Right.
You're
No.
talking about county department heads.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
county
that's
department.
Yeah.
his job.
Right,
Not
right, and
our
I
job.
didn't see it in the ordinance because I guess I have not been made privy to his contract, but I can go look for it
No,
again.
no, it won't be
Those
in
are
his
two
contract.
different-
No, no,
Different
it's not,
things.
it's not.
But our,
Oh, okay,
Ken, don't our personnel policies state that the managers in this, I mean, basically everybody will be evaluated? You'd evaluate your management team, and then somebody like Silas evaluates his supervisors and so on and so forth down the road. That's in our
We do
personnel
have, we
laws.
do have policy and, you know, that governs the evaluations and the frequency and how often that should be occurring.
And I take it they are done all the time, and we verify that they're done?
As the administrator for 2 weeks now, going on my third week, I can.
Oh, there you go, escaping out again. But I think
Can I
the
use
question
that
about
too?
that
Is that okay?
those are their case, because I had the same question.
Okay.
It's just a matter of HR and Ken ensuring that they get done. I mean, so we have those policies in place.
You know, and I do find, you know, as the, you know, the administrator, when it comes to the department heads, and there is value with doing the evaluations, I think it's part of being an effective leader and a
Yeah.
manager over a team, is you have to, you know, admittedly, you know, I put more value in the day-to-day conversation more than I do in the annual evaluation, because no evaluation should ever come as a surprise by the time we get to that at the end of the year. And if it does, you know, I'm not doing my job very well in my day-to-day communications with that person, so.
Yeah.
You know, but that being said, we do have some county policy guidance with the appointed department heads. They fall under the my authority as per the county administrator ordinance, and
And what I was talking about, Casey, I think it's up to us as commissioners, because of his contract.
oh, yeah,
It's up to us to ensure that he gets
Yeah.
evaluated every December, because it
Yeah.
is
Yep.
in his contract. Because I'd hate something to happen, then all of a sudden Ken have to say, well, you know, you never gave me my evaluation, it's called through my contract. You know, not that Ken, you'd ever say that. but-
no, I would not.
I just
But-
really appreciate those
Yeah, it's
performance
all in there.
evaluations, so I wanted to make sure that you knew that at least there's two microphones here, value it, and I'm happy to help you whenever.
And I'll tell you one
I'll
thing.
try not to give you as many then assignments, so that
Casey,
you
I
have
can
the time.
tell, I can tell you, Casey, from the last 2 years since I've been in, I have been so pleased with the direction and the work that not only Laura, but especially Desiree, what she's done with our Human Resources Department and the additional staff, the risk manager. Our Human Resources Department has done an excellent job. I'd put them up against probably most of the Human Resources Departments around. They do a great job. Now, if they just, you know how it goes. No, they do a really good job,
Yeah,
so.
I think so.
Okay, so that clarifies that. One more, Casey, you're past your limit. But
It is, I know, that's right. I'm hearing that Ken's going to give me a limit soon, so.
that's why we're talking about having a work session
That's
scheduled.
right.
The board procedures ordinance says that any commissioner at any time can bring agenda items forward, so I would never put a limit or say that, no, it's up to your fellow commissioners.
You have to
I
answer
know
to Mary.
I just want to clarify.
So well.
You just have to make sure Mary and I understand it.
Yes, I look at 900 about 5 times a week right now, so. How do we do this?
Okay, Casey, your last one then.
Yes, so I have been wondering about what it would take to divert garbage from Riverbend to another landfill in the unincorporated county. And so I asked Recology if they could give us a sense, one, of how they can help reduce people's garbage bills by taking recycling out of the garbage. Because for people in rural areas, it's very challenging to do things like recycle glass. Like, we have to collect it and bring it in here. And even then, I'm actually not really
Because we're in
sure.
the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, I
It's
have four trucks that come by my house.
yeah,
One
I'm
for
not
this,
even
one
sure
for
if
that,
I'm
one
actually
for that.
supposed to use the Recology facility here in town. And so I asked Carl Peters at Recology whether he'd be willing to kind of give us an update of what services they could provide, just to a preliminary
Yeah,
conversation.
let me ask Christian Council a question. Now, any change we would have to make, we have for the non-incorporated areas, we have, I take it, a franchise agreement with both Waste Management and Recology.
Correct.
So any additional things we would want them to do, or we would have to renegotiate those franchise agreements?
Well, if we were going to change the franchise agreements, correct. I'm not sure that's what I heard Commissioner Kula discussing.
No, there was a
He-
separate, I just asked that question, so. But like, we can't tell Waste Management under the franchise agreement right now to not take any trash to like Riverbend.
That's not a restriction that's currently in their franchise.
That's to say,
agreement,
that's
my
not in there. So
understanding.
we just couldn't do that. But I think, Casey, the thing of having them come and say what's possible,
Yeah.
I don't have any problem.
Okay,
with
I just want to find out, it was something that I ran on was,
Yeah.
let's, not really because of my own thing, but because people in Yamhill County told me over and over again that they wanted the landfill to be done. And so I'm trying to respect their wishes and find out what we can do. But it's, I need to know what they can do first.
I don't have, and we probably also need to know what Waste Management could do, because they have part of the rural franchise.
Right,
So-
right.
So Recology may be able to do some things that they can't, or vice versa.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So I don't mind.
So I wanted to
making a
bring it up so that
presentation.
you could have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, Carl could probably do a pretty good
Yeah.
presentation.
I'm not clear on what it is that you're asking them to tell us.
Yeah, so I can restate it. I started by saying that I wanted to find out from Recology, one, what it would, if they can divert their unincorporated county garbage from Riverbend landfill, because right now unincorporated Yamhill County, as far as I understand, goes to Riverbend.
From
And then-
Recology.
From Recology. And then two, from Recology, yeah. Like,
I
we
thought
get,
it went to the transfer station.
as far as I understand, it doesn't. But then two, if there would be a cost that would be incurred by having it go somewhere else, because Riverbend is obviously very close, what other services could they provide that would potentially reduce people's garbage bills? And it was stating that for me, I know that it's very onerous to get glass recycled when you're in a rural area.
We'll move to McMinnville.
Right, exactly. But I ran as a rural resident. I can't. And I have a farm too. Because right now, in the rural county, glass is highly recyclable, but we have to bring it somewhere, which is a barrier.
Well, same with me, and we have waste management that won't even go to my house. We have to take it to
The end of the road?
top of the road. So it's just sort of logistics.
Yeah.
And that type of thing.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I'd be interested in.
But I think
what
we
they
can.
could do.
I think it might be possible for people to reuse their garbage bills if they're not, if there's more things that they can recycle or can compost. So.
I think it's a good, I don't mind getting a presentation, but
Okay.
it's not, wouldn't be my really high priority looking at February or March, because with all the work sessions we're talking about having, but
I wonder if it would be information that you could get from them and share with us in an email. We find out a lot of times.
I will send it to this guy.
Meetings don't have to be, sometimes a meeting can be handled in an email.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, something else to consider too.
Thank you for that.
They both Recology and Waste Management have historically come before the board generally once a year, around the time where they're presenting their rates for the next year.
Right.
If you gave them enough lead time, perhaps they could come to that meeting prepared to discuss a little bit about some of these other issues. Or if you wanted to have a meeting sooner, you could certainly schedule a time for them
do you
to
know,
come
do you know when
sooner than
abouts
that.
their rate?
May, June timeframe, generally. I could check with our new solid waste
situation.
coordinator.
And I know that having come to the SWAC meetings for, when it was, I was liaison, that there would be a lot of discussion. I wonder if we could get SWAC involved.
Dave Larmouth and Nick Godfrey probably could be involved, but
To discuss it at a SWAC meeting as an agenda item, and then make recommendation to the commissioners, because they are all totally up to speed on that whole,
Yeah.
they know the answers
They've got the
just
words
like
and they've got
that.
the roots and they know.
well, I do know that the SWAC committee, based on last week's meeting, is going to be recommending some bylaws changes and
changes.
everything to all of SWAC. So, you know, what I'll let them do is get through that process first, because they've, Ashley, who's done a great job, has recognized that there's some changes that really need to be made to SWAC, and I agree with most of the changes she wants to make, but I'd say let them get through that process, and then maybe we look at SWAC for doing those sorts of
Yeah, I think
things.
that's a good point, that would be a good
Yeah.
group for looking at it. Like what possibilities are out there?
But let them know, well, you know, let them get through what they want to get through now first, so.
So if I'm hearing there's no action that's going to be taken or anything scheduled
think
at
on
this
this one
point?
right
No,
now.
yeah, we can go to SWAC with a
We can-
suggestion of a business item
Okay.
or an item.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
Just want to clarify.
No
'cause
emails
we
to
gotta-
Ken that are going to go to you, by the way. I've learned.
Okay, I think we've gone through our long agenda. We don't have any executive session scheduled for today. Mary, do you have any updates?
Just real quick, we had our task force from Strategic Doing on the unaccompanied homeless youth, and we're moving forward with trying to figure out how we'll get the church, First Christian, and a collaboration with Youth Outreach to bring something to McMinnville. We're still working on that. Also, Representative Noble has a placeholder bill which would deal with the squatter issue as it relates to a public health concern. And that basically will give us a little more leeway. We'll see how that goes. And I think that's it.
Casey?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was contacted by more people about the squatter issue, and so it was fresh in my mind. Yeah.
Okay, you have anything, Casey?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention that I went to my first county college, and it was stuff that I knew and stuff that I knew, and then all of a sudden I got to this is awesome. I don't know if this is your experience too, maybe it was. Probably different things, but for me, there was a presentation by the director of OSU Extension's Diversity, Inclusion, Equity program, and she kept hammering over and over again that diversity means innovation, and I really appreciated that. And that's why I really appreciated your bringing up those like more bullet points, because I really feel like when you get more brains and minds and hearts in a room, you do get a better outcome for a community. But it was really great to hear her
Well, you haven't
hammer
heard,
that one home.
You haven't heard anything yet. Wait till you're done with county call.
And then Rob Ovett, the county general counsel, general counsel
for AOC,
said that the future is in all county documents that aren't privileged being on websites. And I thought, whoa. He said, I know, watch out.
I'd be interested in what the legislature
I was
does
like,
with that
I'm going to
one.
take it that he knows what he's talking about.
He does. He's a pretty good attorney.
Yeah. And then I wanted to bring it up. I know that Director of Health and Human Services looped you in, or like made you aware that I met with a group about housing in the county. And I appreciated, because I was like, I can't tell her myself.
Yeah, you can.
Can I?
If we're not voting on something, I mean,
Or we won't be voting. That's, Ken and I had that conversation.
we're not
Yeah.
voting, if you're
Yeah,
having
for the
a
record,
meeting or-
why don't I just use this opportunity to remind you,
Thank
if you're
you.
not discussing or deliberating towards a topic that's on the agenda or likely to come before the board on the agenda item, then you're probably okay. The trick is to know when or whether or not something will likely
Yeah.
come before the
The
board.
foreseeability.
But it's the discussion and or deliberating or voting, right? You can't obviously predetermine the outcome. So it's the discussion and or the deliberation, which is where things can get a little bit tricky.
Right.
So really what it is, it's like I was taught by Sean O'Day at COG. It's if you have any doubt that it's going to be a decision in the near future, and define near, I don't know what near is.
Sure.
But if you know it's going to be one in the decision in the future, you may have to make a decision as a legislative body on, you shouldn't be talking about it.
And so having a group of people get together and working on an issue that we're working on as a county initiative or something isn't really something we're voting on, so.
Great.
You can do that.
Great. And then I wanted to put out there that I was hearing that SNAP benefits for February went out to people in January kind of early, and that it's just on my radar that we as a county may need to be thinking about what's going to happen for folks in the next month and 2 months, just with the federal shutdown ongoing. So I wanted to put that out there so we could start keeping in mind.
Okay. You got anything else, Casey? I just have a couple things. Had some email from the sheriff. As you know, we have quite a few in the county on roads, derelict RVs and derelict trailers. We have one up on Gopher Valley Road that all three providers declined to tow it or declined to store it. This is going to be a much, much bigger issue as they abandon them. I think what's going to happen is if the sheriff inspects them and they don't have any contamination or anything like that, I don't see any way we're ever going to remove those except by somehow either get our public works or somebody involved. Storage, I don't have, or disposal, I don't have the faintest clue, but to have public works tow them off of the road. So I told the sheriff to get a hold of John and copy you in on that, Casey, to see what we're going to do with these, because this one the one up on Gopher Valley, when I went up and looked at it, it's not your average little 20-foot travel trailer. It must be 36, 38 feet sitting on the side of the road.
Do you know,
the road.
Commissioner, why it was that the towing companies declined to tow it? Was there some risk involved, or was it a vehicle that didn't
They're
have
afraid.
capacity
They're
to
afraid
tow,
once
or-
they tow it, if the home turns out to be contaminated, or there's a problem with contamination, then they're going to be stuck with the cost of
And
trying to get
these
it.
are vehicles that are being removed for health and safety reasons because
No,
they're either in the right of way or they're blocking the road?
These are things that people just took up there and they just dropped. They unhitched them and they just dropped them.
I think they're in the right of way.
I think they must
They're in
be.
the
If
right of way.
sheriff's involved, generally, that's when
Yeah.
they'll issue some
These
sort of
particular
health
ones are in the
and
right of way. They're not on
safety, or
private.
if
They're not on private.
They're in the
property.
right of way.
They're in the
Okay.
right of way.
Yeah, so maybe it's something to
Yeah, and so
further
I told.
discussions with the towers to see if there's a way to help
Yeah,
facilitate
well, one
them.
tower couldn't tow it because it was
actually
out of his
moving them.
jurisdiction. Most towers, the other two required, this one on Gopher Valley, it was $1,000 to tow it and then a minimum fee of $3,000 to store it. So there's 4,000 for a trailer, it's probably not worth $500.
Yeah, no, it can be expensive, no doubt.
So, but that topic will be coming in front of us. The only other thing I have is, and I'm sure Mary's aware of it, Casey, and you may not be aware of it, that either we may want to look at either modifying, rescinding, or reactivating it back in Board Order 09-630, I think it is. The county actually formed a ending homeless task force, and I don't know it's still in existence. It's never been reprimanded. It's just never met for the last few years for the whole task force, because there's when they meet, it's definition in that board order, how often they meet, when they meet, who will be a member of it. So I think under the auspices of what you guys are doing, that it might not be a good to either modify that particular board order that ordained that and bring it up to date so we have something, or if we're going to do something else to rescind that particular board order. So we
You
can go in
probably
another
know.
direction.
And I would just say, yeah, that was something that was put into effect, and it was one of those things that it happened, it didn't happen, but lately, because we have so much interest, we've got these various groups working on it. I think I don't see the need for another group to meet, because we're already, this train has left the station, and we're all working on it in different capacities. So to have an actual county task force, we are working on it in our various different, areas.
Well, then I'd probably propose that, and I'm sure there's others like this too, that, so it's not on the books, that we take some kind of action to rescind that board order, so then we don't have to worry about having it as a board order and as a committee, because it's still in our committee, all three of the committee books we got, it still shows as a committee. It's in there showing as a committee, so. And I'm one of those that if we have committees that aren't inactive for some reason, they've been done away with by House action or Senate action or the county's own action, that we should go in and probably clean those. I know Ken was going to work with Christian on trying to get some of those cleaned up.
Yeah, Carrie and I are starting the initial list because we saw the recommendation and we saw that there were several that have been inactive, but the board didn't take any action. From what I understand, the history of it, because there's a chance that committee, it's just that they lacked materials to discuss or there wasn't any action items, and so it, was basically went inactive.
Yeah, but technically it's an active committee. They're just not meeting.
Well, and some of them, I wonder because, I saw a couple of them where a lot of the terms and a lot of the people that have been appointed to that committee, those terms expired years ago, and so nobody's current on that.
I'll leave it up to you and Carrie to make recommendations.
So we'll be
and Christian
working
tells us
with
what we do,
county council to,
I didn't have,
if we need to take
I didn't
action.
know some of those existed until I started going through the liaison positions. Like, this is what? We have a committee for this?
There's a couple of them, yeah.
Okay, do we have anything else to come in front of us?
No, thanks for your patience, everybody.
If not,
Thank you.
I'll adjourn the meeting there. Thanks for
Thank
all
you,
your-
Mr.